Helena had always loved nature's little wonders. Her garden was more than just soil and plants. It was a reflection of how she felt inside. There she cultivated beautiful flowers with hands that, though already bearing some wrinkles, were still steady. The morning sun on her straw hat and her gentle smiles showed a Helena full of life, looking perhaps 10 years younger, with a special sparkle in her eyes. But lately, Helena's mornings in the kitchen didn't hold the same joy. At 78 years old, Helena moved slowly. It wasn't just her age. An invisible weight seemed to make her shoulders stoop. As she prepared her tea, her hands trembled slightly when holding the cup. Her gaze would often drift, remembering brighter, more joyful mornings. A shadow, in the form of type 2 diabetes, had entered her life in recent years. In the beginning, it was just numbers on tests, advice from the doctor, and a new routine of measuring her sugar and taking pills. Helena, a strong woman, faced it as just another challenge. She changed her diet and made an effort to walk, even if the walks had lost their former charm. But the illness was stubborn. Little by little, it drained her strength and her joy. The garden, once her peaceful sanctuary, started to feel like an overwhelming task. The rose bushes seemed to miss her, and Helena missed them, as if a part of her were wilting along with the neglected flowers. A soft sigh would escape her when she looked at the glucose meter on the table. The daily ritual, the tiny drop of blood on her finger, the prick of the needle, was a constant reminder of what she could no longer do. Another day, then, she would think softly, her voice weary. Let's see what today holds for me. The greatest pain, however, wasn't physical, despite her swollen feet at the end of the day and her vision that sometimes blurred. The pain that truly hurt was in her soul. She missed her independence, lived with a constant fear of falling ill, and worried about being a burden to her daughter, Marta. Marta juggled work, her children, and caring for her mother, always with a smile that tried to hide her own concern. One afternoon in the park, this sadness felt more acute. Helena watched. Her grandchildren, 10-year-old Lucas and 8-year-old Sophia, playing cheerfully. Marta, by her side, asked gently, "Mom, are you all right? You seem so far away." Helena gave a faint smile. "I'm fine, my dear. Just a little tired. My legs don't obey me like they used to." Just then, Lucas ran up to her, breathless. "Grandma, come play with us. You have to be the queen of the castle." Helena's smile faded a little. She wanted so much to go, to kneel on the grass, to be their queen, but her body wouldn't let her. "Oh, my love," she replied sweetly. "Grandma needs to be a quieter queen today, here on her throne. But I'm keeping an eye on you, my princes." Lucas's slightly sad look, before he ran back to play, tugged at her heart. Every no Helena had to say to her grandchildren, every outing she couldn't join, every happy moment cut short by fatigue, felt like a small wound. Life, full of color and joy, was right there, close to her, yet it felt as if an invisible barrier separated her from it all. Diabetes seemed to sap not only her energy, but also her joy for life, leaving everything feeling a bit gray and dull. Hope was like a forgotten seed, one that hadn't completely died. But it lay hidden, deep down, buried under so much sadness and exhaustion. The days passed slowly, each one much like the last, holding little joy. Helena felt her sadness grow, like dust settling on the old furniture in her home. After an appointment, Dr. Almeida's words, though spoken with care, sounded bleak and final to Helena. "Mrs. Helena, we need to be realistic. Diabetes is a lifelong condition. Our goal is to manage it, but some difficulties are to be expected. Be realistic." To Helena, that felt like a life sentence. The thought of resigning herself to this reality was like a heavy blanket, smothering the little spirit she had left. She tried to hide it from Marta, but her daughter knew her mother too well and could see the sparkle in her eyes dimming. She noticed Helena was no longer accepting invitations for lunch at her sister's and was spending more time alone in her room. The television would be on at a low volume, more to fill the silence than from any real desire to watch. Marta felt she had to do something, and quickly. She couldn't resign herself to her mother living in such sadness. One Saturday afternoon, as they were sipping weak tea, the only kind Helena felt safe drinking without her sugar levels spiking, Marta decided to bring up something new. She had spent weeks quietly researching, talking with friends, and reading stories online. She was looking for something beyond the usual medications, which only seemed to control the disease but did. Nothing to improve Helena's quality of life. The name Elvira, a real person they both knew, and the idea that even her doctor had noticed an improvement, sparked a flicker of curiosity in Helena, despite her deep-seated skepticism. She was reminded of her rose bushes. Even after a harsh winter, a good pruning and some special fertilizer always made them bloom again. Could there truly be a fertilizer for her own life, which felt so devoid of color? They sat in silence for a moment, but it was a different kind of silence, not as oppressive as before. A sense of hesitant possibility hung in the air. Marta didn't press the issue, just continued to look at her mother with warmth and hope. "A natural product, you said?" Helena asked quietly, almost in a whisper. There was less suspicion in her voice and, just maybe, a tiny spark of interest. That night, sleep didn't come easily to Helena. The word natural replayed in her mind. It wasn't an empty promise of a quick cure, but the thought of a gentler path, more in harmony with the nature she cherished. The sadness hadn't vanished. But amidst it, for the first time in many months, Helena glimpsed a faint light, like the first tender shoot pushing through dry earth after a long drought. Hope, though still fragile, began to stir within her. In the days following that conversation with Marta, Helena was often lost in thought. The idea of this natural compound kept coming back to her. There was the fear of yet another disappointment, but there was also that small glimmer of hope her daughter had kindled. Marta, with her characteristic gentle persistence, brought more information, reading her mother positive testimonials she'd found, always stressing that it was a gentle approach to help the body work better. Finally, one morning, as she gazed at her garden with a longing more intense than usual, Helena made up her mind. She called for Marta. "My dear," Helena said, her voice a little hesitant, but with a new light in her eyes. "About that natural product you were telling me about, your friend Elvira's. I think I'd like to try it." Marta's face broke into a wide smile, relief visibly washing over her. "Oh, Mom, that's wonderful. I'm so happy. We'll get everything arranged right." Away. "Take your time, you start it, and we'll just see how things go, all right?" And so they did. A few days later, Helena started taking the natural supplement. It was a simple thing, no complicated rituals, just one new small step in her daily routine. She didn't allow herself to get her hopes up too high. She had learned over time that patience was her steadfast ally. For the first few weeks, Helena hardly noticed any difference. She continued with her usual routine, checking her glucose, taking the medications Dr. Almeida had prescribed. But then, ever so slowly, something began to shift. First, it was her sleep. Helena realized she was waking up feeling a little more rested, as if her worries hadn't weighed on her so heavily through the night. Then she started to feel a different kind of lightness when she woke up. That profound weariness, the kind that seemed to cling to her body from the moment she woke, began to subside. One morning, she caught herself opening her bedroom window and breathing in the fresh air with a sense of pleasure she hadn't experienced in a very long time. She looked out at her garden and, Instead of the familiar pang of anguish at not being able to tend to it, she felt a tiny stirring of will. "Mom, you seem different today," Marta remarked during breakfast a few days later. "More energy, there's more life in your eyes." Helena smiled, a tentative yet genuine smile. "You know, dear, I have been feeling a bit better myself. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's as if a fog is slowly lifting." As the days passed, these small changes continued to accumulate. Helena found she had more enthusiasm for small household tasks. She no longer felt the overwhelming urge to lie down after lunch. One afternoon, she took a long-forgotten book of poetry from the shelf and read a few pages, something she hadn't done in months. The most telling moment, however, occurred on a sunny afternoon. Helena was walking through the house when her gaze landed on one of her favorite rose bushes, near the living room window. It had several dry leaves and was clearly in need of attention. Previously, she would have merely sighed and walked on by. But on this particular day, something compelled her. She retrieved her old gardening shears, slightly rusted from lack of use, and went to the plant. Her hands were still a little unsteady, but with a firmness that surprised even herself, she began to prune the dead branches and clear away the yellowed leaves. Marta arrived to find her mother there, engrossed with her rosebush, a small pile of dry leaves at her side. Marta's eyes welled with tears. "Mom," she said softly, her voice choked with emotion. Helena looked at her daughter, a tranquil smile gracing her face. "I think this little friend of mine here was in need of some tender, loving care," she said, gesturing towards the rosebush. "And you know something? I think I was too." Ever since she had started that natural treatment, things truly did seem different. It wasn't a miracle, not a sudden cure. It was a gentle, gradual improvement, like the morning sun returning to warm her bones, slowly coaxing the colors back into her life. Hope, once a deeply buried seed, was now a tender green shoot, growing with a quiet, renewed strength. The months that followed were like a rebirth for Helena. That initial small improvement, which began as a timid sprout, had transformed into a strong, vibrant plant. Her morning vitality was no longer a surprise, but a welcome constant in her life. Helena would wake, open her window, and inhale the fragrance of the flowers in her garden, which was once again thriving under her daily care. The rose bushes, long neglected, now boasted lush blooms, as if in gratitude for their dedicated gardeners' return. Walks, once an ordeal, became a pleasure once more. At first, short strolls around the block. Soon, Helena felt confident enough to venture to the small square near her home, where she'd meet old friends and catch up on their news. Her laughter, once stifled by worry, now rang out, freer and more infectious than ever. Marta watched it all, her heart brimming with joy. Seeing her mother that way, her eyes shining and her energy restored, was the greatest gift she could have received. "Mom, it's so wonderful to see you like this," Marta said one day, as she helped Helena water the plants. "It's as if a huge weight has been lifted off your shoulders." Helena smiled, that full, heartfelt smile Marta had missed so dearly. "And it truly has, my dear. I feel as though I've rediscovered a part of myself that was lost. And it's all thanks to your persistence and that little find of yours," she added, referring to the natural supplement she faithfully continued to take each day. Even Dr. Almeida, during a follow-up visit, noted the difference. Helena's tests showed a level of glycemic control he hadn't witnessed in years. He peered at her over the top of his glasses, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "Mrs. Helena, I must commend you. Your discipline with your diet and exercise has produced excellent results. You are doing remarkably well." Helena and Marta shared a knowing glance and a subtle smile. They knew discipline was important, but they also knew their little natural secret had been key to this remarkable turnaround. Helena simply thanked the doctor, feeling an inner peace she hadn't known in a very long time. She didn't need miracles. She just needed to feel well, to have a good quality of life. And that was precisely what was happening. Her grandchildren felt the change too. Grandma now had more patience for their school stories, more enthusiasm for a card game, or even for a few impromptu dance steps in the living room to an old tune. Lucas and Sophia had their fun-loving grandma back, the one who told the best stories and always offered a comforting lap. One Sunday afternoon, the family was gathered in Helena's backyard. The aroma of baking cake drifted from the kitchen, mingling with the sweet scent of the flowers. Helena, seated in a wicker chair, watched her grandchildren scamper across the lawn, the late afternoon sun painting the sky in warm hues. It wasn't a life without its challenges. Her diabetes still required daily attention and care, but it was a life filled with quality, with joy, with renewed hope. She felt strong, not with the vigor of youth, but with the serene strength of one who had weathered a storm and found her calm once more. The natural supplement had been like good fertilizer for tired earth. It didn't do all the work on its own, but it gave Helena's body the tools it needed to rebuild, to find its equilibrium, and to blossom once more. The gray shadow had lifted, giving way to a dawn brimming with new colors and possibilities. Helena was ready to embrace each new day with gratitude and a smile. Her inner garden, just like her outer one, was again in full bloom. Helena's story serves as a reminder that even when days seem bleak and vitality feels diminished, there can always be a path to rediscovering the vibrant colors of life. Sometimes one small change, a new discovery embraced with care and hope, can mark the beginning of a profound transformation. Each person's journey is unique, yet the pursuit of well-being and happiness is a common thread that binds us all, demonstrating that it's never too late to nurture oneself and watch one's own garden bloom again.